Oh, now it's back to 2.
Oh, there.
All right, welcome. We're going to start before our council meeting tonight with a work session with the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, which is BAC. So with that, I will turn it over to Michelle.
Great, thank you. This is a presentation of the 2025 work plan for the Basalt Affordable Housing Commission. And so we'll go through these slides here for you. As my friend James gets the PowerPoint all teed up. Awesome. So, and
Next one.
yep.
Sorry.
It's okay. So your citizens on the BOT Commission are Katie Erickson, Ann Baker, Dave Portman, Jay Israel, Perry Klesbees, Kaya Rumney, and Amanda Smith Firestein. We are lucky to have a lot of different expertise on this group, from mortgage brokers, bankers, real estate, development professionals, and a little bit of everybody. BOC is based on 3 main things: inclusivity, innovation, and sustainability of housing for our community. Just a brief history for anybody out in the televised world on what the history of BOC is. In 2009, BOC was formed in collaboration with the Roaring Fork Community Development Group, and which kind of started a lot of things here for Basalt. That's really notable. Just a lot of times people try to compare what's happening in Basalt to APCHA, and we just don't have that long history that APCHA does, so a lot of new things for us here. In 2013, not that long ago, BOC was designated a formal advisory commission to the council, reviewing land use applications and making recommendations for programs. 2015, our housing guidelines were revised, and as you have recently been presented, in 2024, our housing needs assessment were updated. So a lot of the strategies we'll be talking about tonight are based on that updated housing needs assessment. Some quick highlights of our BOC history. Identified properties in the UGB for affordable housing. We do have a community housing credit program, similar to what they have in Aspen. We just don't have a market for it, so you don't hear about it very often. We've recommended land incentives for affordable housing development in the land use code. Probably the most exercised document that BOC uses are livability standards for the affordable housing units. And of course, reviewing land use applications, the code, and policy amendments. So going forward, the 25 work plan for BOC is based on the 2020 master plan goal of affordable inclusive housing, providing housing that serves residents across a range of demographics, incomes, and collective needs. So the work plan combines 2 different aspects: the bond initiatives from our previous BONT. That was, I'm trying to be really effective there and putting 2 words together into one. Bond initiative. $5.2 million in bond funds for some of our development programs, plus the strategies and policy recommendations that were recently presented by Economic Planning Systems. So, what that means on the next slide is bond initiatives, for anybody who doesn't know, but I think we've been through this a few times. Parcel 2E across from Taka, we're looking at a mixed-use development there of housing and a community space. We have that Tier 1 grant, and we actually have a kickoff meeting with Design Workshop and Charles Cuniff Architects this Friday. We have the Rugby adjacent lot, also known as Parcel 9. Z Group Architecture is working through a lot of site planning. We've reviewed some site plans with the fire department recently and are kind of moving forward with that. Very initial stages. And then the development of Stotts Mill. We're working on 2 of those lots right now. We have some conceptual designs that are a little further along than these sketches that have just gone through the SARC review at Stotts Mill. We'll be bringing back a contract for construction hopefully in October. Get that ground broken and get some foundations in this year for a finished product next year.
There's a couple duplex, or is it, duplex over there already. Is that the same designer, different designer? Just curious.
Yeah, that existing duplex is not deed restricted. It's free market, and that's a different architect.
Okay.
But we certainly took some inspiration from that building. So the work plan really follows, it's kind of a blend of the master plan goals as well as the strategies that were outlined by economic planning systems. So one is to broaden the town's income categories and to include categories 4 and categories 5 in our land use code going forward. We did hear that there were a lot of citizens who didn't fall in categories 1 through 3 and a need to kind of touch that missing middle, if you will. So we'll be bringing that forward. The next one is develop a program to purchase deed restrictions, partnering with Pickett and Eagle counties, pool funding to identify priority areas in which to apply the program. So that strategy really hits on the left side of this slide are all of the goals from the master plan. And that strategy is just one of the ways that's hitting a lot of these things on creating a toolkit to preserve existing housing, incentivize the reuse of existing local housing, avoid the detrimental effects of the second home phenomenon.
Recording in progress.
Excellent. And consider public and nonprofit partnerships and those sorts of things. Another big strategy in the EPS document was to build support for a dedicated funding source. This is a lot of snippets from that EPS study, and they're just examples on the right of what it looks like if the town of Basalt was to have a dedicated sales tax revenue just for affordable housing. These are really just kind of round numbers to give you an example, but if we had an annual sales tax of $7 million and we associated some dedicated revenue towards an affordable housing fund, there's a potential for getting up to $4 million there. Whether that would work for the electorate, we don't know, but that's just a way that other communities have done that. And of course, the property tax question often comes up, which I guess we'll find out from Pickett County if that goes forward. But those are just some examples. Those aren't the ways. They're just opportunities, and things will come back in the future after we study. Creating an ADU incentive program and making it possible to actually build ADUs in town. Right now, we have a lot of barriers, including our land use code, that doesn't allow them in most neighborhoods. So making some adjustments to our zoning, and then specifically meeting with a lot of HOAs to see if they're interested in that, moving that forward. Something that the town council has already been doing, but kind of just really setting the bar and formalizing it, is incentivizing development in the UGB to create more than 20% affordable housing through annexation entitlement processes. We've had a lot of success recently, especially with Jadwin, obviously, but kind of creating that as a standard is something to look on going forward. Next one. So in summary, we kind of have 4 buckets that the Bach work plan is going in: the bond initiatives, land use code amendments, preservation of existing housing, and then funding mechanism. So some of these are easier and can happen at a quicker pace than others. For example, adopting the new income categories, that's something we can do at a staff level and do a land use code amendment. Something that's going to take a little bit longer is creating a strategic plan, and that'll help us prioritize all of these things and how we'll roll them out and how to prioritize funding for each of them. Yep, so maybe we'll leave it on the last slide just because there's a ton on there, and if anybody has any questions for me. Thank you, James.
I have one on the zoning to allow ADUs. I remember I think we talked about this in other sessions. And isn't there a lot of, I think like Southside was an example that under their PUD there is you're not allowed to have ADUs?
Yeah.
Or only certain lots in there. So, and then I know like Old Town is, you can't have ADUs just depending on house size, etc. So in this zoning, are we gonna do some PUD amendments for it, or is it, yeah, okay.
So I think what will happen is we'll end up rolling out sort of an outreach to individual HOAs to kind of do a litmus test on their interest in having ADUs. And in a perfect world, there's going to be a neighborhood that says everybody wants these really badly, and we're willing to amend our documents to allow that. Because it's twofold. We need to have the zoning adjusted to allow that, and then we also need the HOA covenants to be adjusted.
They
So,
have to vote
yeah.
internally. So even if we made a blanket thing of, like we said, all Basalt is allowed to have ADUs, we
Right,
still have to then readjust individual.
right. Yeah,
If they exist, I guess.
If what?
If they exist, our HOA has been extinct for
Well, yeah,
25 years. So,
And then with that zoning, would we be allowing, are we gonna adjust any square footage for it? Like, so would we make like ADUs exempt? Or not exempt, but they count, you could build this size ADU, not going against your,
yeah, so a lot of those details, luckily, we got a More Housing Now grant to hire a consultant who can spend time working out all of those details for us.
Okay.
But along those lines, probably. But those are details that we'll have to have worked out for sure, because it certainly won't be a one-size-fits-every neighborhood.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the workflow look like? This is like a process question. Some of the stuff you guys are working on, obviously that's up here, also that Bach's working on. So how does that kind of interplay work as far as the workflow?
Yeah, so luckily, we did get this More Housing Now grant to be able to hire a land use consultant to come in and draft a lot of the policies that are up here and the programs and kind of work through a lot of those details. So we will go out to an RFP for that and hopefully have that person on board or company on board by January. And then that'll take some time, depending. Some of these will be quicker than others, but probably a good 4 or 5 months to roll out the details because it'll be a lot of finessing, if you will. Some of these things at the end of the year, just in the planning department, housing related or not, we have a kind of a laundry list, if you will, of housekeeping land use code amendments. So some of these can roll into that. And so that's sort of how it rolls out.
And Bach would just give feedback on it? Is that how?
Yeah. They're an advisory group, so they're, yeah,
Makes sense. Yeah,
that helps, yeah.
Just curious.
I'd love to give them stuff to do, but I don't think that. Yeah.
And that committee is full?
That committee is full.
Great.
Yep, full 7.
On the fee in lieu, can't we do that fairly easily, just by resolution?
Yeah, we're getting information from the consultants to be able to update that. That should be at a staff level.
Can't we just set a fee? Aren't the consultants just gonna tell us to raise it?
Yeah, you have to have some sort of nexus on it. You can't just kind of pick a number, so.
Consult us to at least double it.
Yeah, do we have to offer the fee in lieu option?
I believe
Can we raise it
we
some?
have to say we're okay with it. Like,
Right.
they can't pick it and say, we want fee in lieu and not.
No, I guess I'm saying is that like, does fee in lieu have to be an option? Is it an option to just get rid of fee in lieu?
We've kind of gone through this discussion a few times, and we actually had it with UPS. I don't know, Jeff, can you speak to that a little bit?
Because unless the fee in
want.
lieu
Yeah.
actually covers what it costs per square foot to build, it's,
Yeah, I mean,
Not
to,
effective.
for our inclusionary housing code to be compliant with state law, your question is, do you need to offer a fee in lieu option? I don't think so, but I can't answer that definitively without looking into it more. It's a good question.
yeah, and that was my question, like
Yeah.
legally,
Yeah.
can we just get rid of it? Or does it have to be
Yeah.
provided as an option?
Yeah, and that can be something we
we
can
look into
definitely
that.
look into. Sorry.
No.
And you might address, just with regard to Ryan's question on the fee, should we keep a fee, that it does have to be tied back to something, so like the actual cost of building per square foot, or we can't just pick it. State law prohibits us doing that, so it does have to be sort of empirically derived.
Well, and won't we have some of those numbers internally from what we're building at in Stotts Mill?
Yeah, but you'd have to do that analysis of, what's the average square foot cost, and I think all of the fees that we have are, established through some kind of study, and usually it's a consultant that's gonna do that work, so.
It is part of the last bit of our contract with EPS, is they're also studying the short-term rental fees. So it's not an additional item, if you will.
Just a short history. The 2009, a guy named Chris Gates came down from Boulder and organized a community meeting with about 80 people in this room, and we talked about 4 values that the community held dearly. And the conclusion at the end of the meeting was that the 5th value was people. And that's what started Bach, was the conversation. It kind of slipped away from us for quite a while and went into a black hole in a way that focused more on things that were, is this countertop the appropriate size for the living unit, and is 3/4 of a bathtub count as a full bath, and really got into minutia. And this seems a little bit more big picture, more collaboration with other counties. To the consultant piece, Eagle and Picken have both studied this to death, and I'm hoping that we can piggyback on what they've figured out. The ADU thing in our subdivision was there for a while. The requirement was you had to have it attached, which is fine. But then for some reason or another, a resident of our neighborhood came in and then was told that you could no longer do it over there. So I don't know where that went sideways. But let's go. This is what we've been talking about for quite a while. The short-term Northwest COG meeting, we talked about the steamboat short-term tax. It's 20.3%, and they've generated significant income. I don't know if people would push back on a 20% short-term rental fee, but it's generated significant money. Their effort to get that 500 acres into an affordable housing program was defeated by their voters. So that's just a Northwest COG report. The Roaring Fork Development Group really started the stuff across the street here and got misdirected somehow. But anyway, this sounds good.
What is the state of play on short-term rentals as far as like how many are out there, like kind of big picture stats?
Yeah, I think right now we have something around like 45?
No, we're at 50 plus now for this year. And in prior years, we were more at like 20 to 25. And so we got that software that allows us to do enforcement on picking up short-term rentals that don't have licenses. So that's basically doubled the licenses that we have.
So did you see that increase after the software went in, or like how much is the software?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
after the software went in.
So really, there was probably always 50, but we just didn't know about 25 of
Yeah,
them.
it's possible.
And do we think now that we're capturing the vast majority of them, or that there's still quite a few out there that aren't compliant with licensing and?
No, we, on a quarterly basis, run that software, and then we send out enforcement letters on the ones that don't have a license, but are in the VRBO or listed. So we think we're getting them.
Yeah, the software scours all of the listing sites, even the lesser well-known ones, and so it can pick them up quickly. And sometimes we'll get notifications from people who have an old listing that they're not actually acting upon. Sometimes it's people that haven't registered, and so it's pretty savvy.
Yeah, we're running into a loophole where the short-term rental is a 30-day period, so people are just signing agreements that are longer than 30 days and avoiding the whole licensing and everything else up in 2 subdivisions. I think there's 120 on the roster in Pitkin County, which doesn't seem like very many. So,
Yeah, I don't know the
Does that include
stats.
incorporated places or?
No,
well,
no, it doesn't include like Snowmass or Aspen or, yeah, those would be separately accounted for.
Yeah, but the 30-day thing, I mean, that's been going on,
a long time.
yeah, up in Aspen, I can speak to for a long time. I don't know how you get around that.
You know,
You
they're
can,
working on it.
yeah.
For the short-term rentals, could we do like a mock-up of, what we're charging currently, just on a spreadsheet? I mean, because we have it all in that system, right? And then just say, hey, if we bumped it up to 5, 10, 20, just to see it in a scale and see what, I know we'll have huge pushbacks if we go to 20%, but
Yeah.
it'd be interesting just to see what it would generate.
Yeah, that's actually the final step of the EPS study, is to make a recommendation on what that fee should be and how much of that fee should go towards an affordable housing program. But yeah, in comparing what's been successful in other communities so far and what we could get the most of here to make it.
Will the EPS study also show us what kind of units are in the short-term rental pool? As far as, is it going to say it's however many 1-bedrooms or 2-bedrooms or single-family homes or,
I think we have that in the software.
yeah?
I don't think we have it in the software, but we could calculate that fairly easily at a staff level, sure.
It's just more of a informative, interesting, statistic to have, I would think, as far as what is, if we increase the fees, right, we're sending a message that we want to penalize short-term rentals because we want those units to stay in the long-term rental pool. And so it would just be interesting to see what kind of units are we talking about.
How many, what's our ceiling on these licenses, Have we decided this is how many?
We don't have a ceiling in the code on short-term rental licenses. We do kind of on a per building basis, so you can at most have 5 in a individual multifamily building. For example, like Market Street Lofts and Willits can only have 5 at one time.
Is that per building?
It's per building, yeah.
Is that something that we're interested in, is, setting a maximum?
Is
Number or
EPS
something?
looking at it already, or is that not in their scope?
I don't think so. I think that would be, we can look at it. We can ask them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that too, like what makes sense. We don't want it to keep growing and growing. I don't even know if it is, but because it sounds like the software just started catching it, within the last year or so, or?
We kicked it off first quarter. I mean, we're generating around $500,000 in lodging tax
Okay.
at a 4% clip, so it's like 125 per point. So I mean, you go from 4 to 20, you're taking it up 5 times. So you're less likely to be, greeted with some skeptics, pushback or whatever.
And of course, that's the number you just cited includes our hotels
Correct.
as well, right? So you gotta
Okay.
carve those out.
That's a lodging tax though, isn't it? The lodging tax for that's not dedicated to affordable housing, is it?
No, no.
'Cause that's the other conversation that's going on over in Eagle, is that a reallocation of the lodging tax to affordable housing.
You have the authority to do that. It would have to go to a vote.
Right, right.
And our 4% currently goes to the chamber, it goes to parks, and it goes to infrastructure reinvestment. Some of those things, infrastructure reinvestment, for example, is a pretty important one for us. But, you know, there may be a balance there. If council wanted to discuss, you know, being able to use some of, you know, some percentage of that towards affordable housing. The one thing to keep in mind, over the last 10 years, we've been paying some of the hotels, or reimbursing hotels for infrastructure investment they made, and that sunsets this year. So there will be some sort of found money, if you will, that could be used for infrastructure, or, you know, you could look at possibly setting some of that aside for affordable housing. But again, we'd need to ask the voters for that, so.
That would be a good thing I would ask EPS to do, is kind of look at the reality of what's going on around us, because that's what other communities are talking about doing, is if there's a piggy bank somewhere that has been taking care of certain specific needs that's now available for other uses for whatever reason, that's significant, in my opinion. And if we're going out and showing people that we can do those kinds of things and then ask for a property tax increase, it just makes it easier to digest. So, you know.
Yeah, if there's found money is one thing. I think you gotta look at it in totality with the.
Sure.
All, you know, all the other,
Yeah.
was that 2 weeks ago, 2 meetings ago, we talked about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we can't pick and choose. We should look at the whole system in terms of where, you know, where things are going, and can they change direction?
Yeah, the long-range funding will certainly be a big piece of analysis that we'll have to work through and come back and offer some options on.
And there's probably just not, with our existing revenue, there's not a lot of money to be carved out to say, in our operating money, we want to put that towards affordable housing, then we're going to lay people off, or we're going to delay,
No.
you know, projects, or, you know, things like that. So I think it, other than the lodging tax, you know, a lot of the money is specifically restricted, and or general operating, and so it's got to be a conversation about what new resources are out there besides perhaps the lodging tax. And keep in mind, today we're going to have a conversation a little later about some affordable housing purchase, and you know, the source of some of that money is coming from real estate transfer assessments, which is fairly new. So those have been able to build up. So that's really nice, a nice resource for us, just really kind of for that one-time investment versus recurring. But I think, you know, what EPS came up with, and what Michelle is, you know, sharing, I think we've got some good stones to turn over and see what we can do for the future.
Yeah, I think I'd rather do that than cut services, if, you know, unless there's a really good reason, you know, in general, like cutting services, obviously labor doesn't seem very appealing, and I don't think there's a lot of, you know, opportunity out there other than what you just described with the reimbursement for the hotel infrastructure, right? There's nothing else like that really coming up, or?
No, besides the REITs, so we kind of got those two sources.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we cut services, but there may be a demand that we're going to be seeing for a level of service to be increased. And that's got to factor into this too.
Yeah.
So what, you know, and that's direct correlation between balanced economy and a balanced workforce.
Certainly not gonna go down.
No, it's not.
Great, what are we doing on time? Just about there. Is there anything else
That's it?
that you had, or any other questions or comments, discussion? All All right, for those watching, we are going to take a break here till 6 o'clock and start our regular meeting then. So see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle.
All right, good evening and welcome back. We're going to start the regular portion of our September 10th Basalt Town Council meeting. Before I do the roll call, just want to remind everybody, if you want to join via Zoom, you are able to. You just need to go to the basalt.net, go to the Agenda and Minutes tab, and then click on the September 10th meeting packet, and you'll find Zoom instructions on there. So you can join that way and make comments if you'd like. So I will go ahead and ask Pam if please call the roll.
Happily, thank you, sir. All right, let's begin with Angela Anderson.
Here.
Rick Stevens.
Here.
Anna Berman is absent. Angèle Dupré-Bouchard.
Here.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
And Dieter Schindler.
Here.
6 out of 7 of the team are here. Thank you.
Right. Next item up, we have the consent agenda. There's quite a few things on here, so if there's anything you'd like to take off, anyone here, just let me know, but I'll go ahead and go through that now. We have item 2A, the minutes from August 27th, 2B, resolution number 34, series of 2024, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving agreements with Iron Edge for information technology services and support. 2C is resolution number 35, series of 2024, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving an encroachment license with the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority. 2D, continued public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 11, series of 2024 to September 24th, 2024. An ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a minor subdivision, slope review, community housing review, and site plan review to subdivide 168 Original Road into 2 lots and for the construction of a new single-family residence, Basalt, Colorado. And last, 2E, first reading ordinance number 17, series of 2024, ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving a sublease agreement with the Blue Lake Preschool for the Stotts Mill Daycare Space, Lot 37, Stotts Mill PUD, Basalt, Colorado. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely.
Actually, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I thought I had that in my head. Okay, next up, we have call to the public. Just a reminder, limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to me. Identify yourself by name and address when you make comments, and make sure you sign in the back of the room. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive, and we will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. With that, I will open it up to public comments. All right, I don't see anybody in the room coming up, nor is there anyone online. So we will go ahead and move on to mayor and council reports and comments. Y'all have.
I'd like to report out on the Northwest COG meeting that was held the other day. It's my first one that I've attended in quite a while. The main topics were around charging stations and electrification and making those more available. It turns out that the resort areas are very high demand for those stations, so that kind of dominated the conversation, is how are they going to manage that? Because I guess a lot of people are driving up in electric cars and getting here and can't get home at the end of the day of skiing, so it makes it a little tough. The other one that came up with the STR tax we talked about a little earlier, and what communities are doing in the Northwest COG region to allow that to be able to fund more affordable housing. So that's a quick one. And also, real quickly, on the Pickens County Growth Advisory Committee, kind of reignited a week or so ago after about 18 months of time off to allow staff and their consultants to get together a program for the next 2 years. I handed out a card to each of you guys, and this is on Pickens County's website. But on September 30th, there'll be an open house at the Pickens County Library for the citizens to comment on the next step in the process. Climate change, balanced workforce, balanced economy, and rural preservation are the 4 values that are shared by the committee that recommended the language to the commissioners and to P&Z. It'll start with P&Z. I think the biggest 2 challenges are a balanced economy and balanced workforce at this time. The climate change and the rural preservation has a pretty good foundation built, but there's a lot of discussion about how to manage the economy a little bit better and how to also provide a more balanced workforce. So this is kind of a 2-year deal. DWI is a lead consultant on it right across the street. Jessica Garrow is the contact. She's great. Kara Silbernagel gave us permission tonight to talk about it a little bit. So I'd encourage everybody that lives in Pekin County in this neighborhood and down Valley a little bit to check it out and get involved. Thanks. That's it for me.
Thanks for the update. Anyone else? All right, and I don't have anything either, so I will turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I'm going to turn most of my time over to Peter Boyat from CPW. I had asked him if he would be able to come tonight and speak for a few moments. We've had some question on bears in the community, so I thought he'd be a good person to answer some questions and just give us some updates. Peter is in the middle of hunting season and doing bear-related calls, and so wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it, so we didn't put him on the agenda, but thought it was important enough to get you guys in front of him. So with that, Peter, I think we just wanted to get a general update on where things are, and kind of most of us, I think, know, but for sake of the public listening in, maybe why we're seeing some different behaviors this year, and kind of where CPW plays a role in that.
Yeah, thanks Ryan.
Yep.
Thanks Council for having me. Yeah, it's been a busy year, busy summer with bears. I was dealing with bear calls before coming over here, so definitely an uptick valley-wide, both the Eagle and Roaring Fork valleys for bears. It seems to be a poor food year, natural food year. Not a lot of acorns, serviceberry, chokecherries out there.
It's okay.
Yep, let me get closer. So subsequently, we're seeing a lot more bear activity in town than most folks are used to. It happens about every so often, but this year just seems to be quite a bit more. So, typical stuff. We got to button up our bearware, button up our trash, our hobby livestock, those sorts of things. Houses, windows, doors. That's one of the biggest things we're seeing is with the warm weather is folks leaving windows open at night and bears getting in. So we really try to stress that to folks when they're dealing with a hot summer. But yeah, if there's any lingering questions or advice I can give, happy to talk about it.
I have a crazy question on it. Can we do a food drop for the bears? I know that's like totally out there and you don't feed wildlife, but I just don't know where. I mean, you guys are dealing with calls all the time. Our chief isn't here, but I know I've had to make multiple calls to him. I was chasing a bear in the middle of the day in my neighbor's trash. Granted, they don't have a bear-proof trash can, but it wasn't like they left their trash out. They just put it out for pickup that day. And I just feel like we're getting so many more interactions with the bears. Is there anything besides doing the precautions? Like, it's a crazy year. Can we do a crazy solution? I mean, we're gonna have more interaction. Like, aren't these younger bears that are coming up to these houses, they're already training themselves now for trash and cars and garages, and so we're kind of like, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. And I just didn't know if that's anything you guys ever consider, or it's just too crazy to.
Yeah, so I think what you're asking or referring is like, can we supplement food on the forest and attract bears to go there and eat, sort of thing? Definitely not a great idea. In my opinion, something that we don't want to do or try to do. You're only habituating bears to non-natural food sources and attracting them and causing more problems. It is nature, and this happens from time to time, and there's food failure years, and we just came off of a really great spring last year with a lot of moisture, a lot of natural food, and we had a very, very few bear conflicts in Basalt. But, you know, just because we had a lax year the year before doesn't mean we need to let our guard down and continue that into a bad failure and food year. If we're having sows that are continuing to twin and have triplets, we've even seen sows with 4 cubs, you know, it's dependent on food and how healthy they are. And if we're supplementing that in a non-natural way, that's not something that is a good idea, in my opinion. I think it only increases the problem by attracting them and to human and being habituated to human type food sources.
I know the one you caught, you and the PE caught in front of my house went to a rehabilitation center for cubs in Del Norte. Can you tell us like a little bit about that, how that works, and then where do the bears go after that?
So what we're also starting to see too in this year is sows. You know, we have sows with cubs that will get hit on the road, and they have orphan cubs. This year especially too, we're starting to see a lot of cubs get kicked free and get kicked free earlier. And that could be a result of not having enough food, and that's just nature's way of she's got to survive herself. So from time to time, cubs can be orphaned. When we have potential orphaned cubs, you know, we don't want to handle a bear if we don't have to in town. That's our ultimate goal. We want to increase tolerance for bears, increase everybody's ability to protect bears and get food sources away. But from time to time, they will stay in town, and cubs will stay in town, and they'll start getting into trouble. If they're in poor body condition, if it's early in the spring and they're super small, or if it's in the fall and they're malnourished and they're orphaned and hanging out for a week or so, or starting to be more visible and cause trouble, we will make an effort to capture them and take them to a rehab facility. We have a CPW rehab facility in Del Norte. There's also a rehab facility in Silt that will take cubs, and basically they'll beef them up for the winter, and once they're ready to be denned up in the late winter and spring, we build artificial dens all across the valley, and we'll drop them into artificial dens so that they wake up in the spring in suitable bear habitat. But as we start getting later into the fall, those sows are kicking cubs out. If we have a really healthy, good-sized cub, you know, 50, 60-ish pounds sometimes, you know, if it's a situation where they are truly orphaned and they're healthy, we'll just relocate them this time of year. So it's always a case-by-case basis, but that one cub earlier in the year was pretty small. So and it had been hanging out for quite a few days. So we went ahead and scooped that one up, and it's in a rehab facility currently. And you know, statewide, I think we're having a lot of conflict, but definitely in the state, our valley has the most bear conflicts currently. So
That's a great program to help mitigate, I think, some of these conflicts or potential conflicts that without having to take lethal actions, you know, with the bears. So it's great.
Yep.
Speaking of orphaned cubs, I live on Soper Circle. I think you've probably spent some time there recently. It's my understanding that a mother bear was shot by a resident of our street, and I was wondering if you could talk about what you're doing to deter behavior like that from humans, and also if you can talk about what you've done, you know, with those cubs, and what is the penalty for an action like that?
Yeah, so there's unfortunate circumstances, and note too, it's still an open investigation, so I mean, I'm not going to share a ton of details and information, but a sow was found dead over on Soper Circle, and we subsequently were able to successfully capture the 2 cubs that were with it, and as I was saying before, those were 2 healthy cubs. So they were looking good for this year, and So they were candidates for relocation. We didn't feel it was necessary to take them up or take them down to Del Norte. And as far as we tend to see this in a bad bear year, and I'm not going to say this is a terrible bear year, but we've had more activity than we have in the past 5 for sure. We encourage hazing of bears when they're in a town setting or a city setting. You want to make sure those bears are not comfortable around people, around homes. We don't want them breaking into homes, causing significant property damage, bluff charging people. It's very rare that there will be a predatory attack on a human, but sow and cubs, there's definitely situations where defensive, aggressive behavior could have. So there's certain ways to haze animals, and there's certain ways not to haze animals. Obviously, lethally, you don't want to try and harm them to where it's going to cause them to die, but just enough to scare them away and keep them away. Outside of city limits, we advise folks, and we will actually give folks non-lethal, like rubber buckshot, to haze bears away. And it's about proper education on how to haze bears, and I don't think anybody's intent is malicious or anything, but it's more of just the proper way to encourage bears to go away from your trash and go away from your house. So I think just getting that education out there on the proper way to haze bears is imperative right now, especially this year as we start getting into hyperphagia, and it's not over. We're going to continue to see a lot more increased bear activity until we start getting enough snow to push those bears into hibernation.
What are some of the proper
That's
hazing?
what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Can you share an example of some proper ways to haze bears?
Yeah, so like for in town, like I mentioned, outside city limits, using non-lethal like rubber buckshot is definitely a good way to haze bears. But inside town, air horns, very loud, banging pots and pans, taking a tennis ball and throwing a tennis ball at them. Can scare them away. Things to protect your home and your house. If you are having frequent bear activities, we can suggest like ammonia-soaked rags around like entrances. If a bear is trying to get through a window or trying to peel back at the garage, using some ammonia-soaked rags. Like I mentioned before, the biggest one and the biggest problem we see and have is unlocked doors and unlocked windows. Where bears are getting in, and I realize it's hot and it's hard to sleep, but that's the number one reason why we get bears in homes is through open windows. And then securing trash. I mean, that one is just an ongoing, and I know that Basalt PD has been really hard at it and working with folks on that as well, and I am too, and we've been hazing bears in town, and so those are some of your best options. We also take reports on bears, just sightings in neighborhoods. Oftentimes we're not taking any action against those bears. We look all around us, we're in bear habitat, so there's expectation that there are going to be bears in town every year. We just don't want them staying in town, lingering, continuing to get food in human food sources. If we lock up our attractants and our human food sources, those bears are going to keep moving on until they find either a natural food source. So they'll keep moving.
And I know you mentioned outside town limits, rubber bullets, but just to be clear, within town limits, no firearms,
Correct.
BB guns, pellet guns,
Correct.
anything like that is...
Yep, so not an option for in-city limits, obviously. So like I said, tennis balls, rocks, small rocks, that sort of thing. Just to encourage them to move on. It's novel for some to see a bear, and it's really cool, and having them hanging out, and I get it, but you just don't want them feeling super comfortable because they will be habituated, and we'll get more comfortable, and we've seen it time and time again where habituated bears start to cause problems.
I think the next generation shows up too. We get moms and cubs, and the next thing you know, the cub's coming back with her family. And so we see the same mom 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row.
Yeah,
Where we are, it's like bear corridor.
Definitely a thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm seeing a lot of crabapple trees, a lot of fruit trees that are the few that are producing this year. Tons of crab apples. That's what they're going after right now. Not a ton of hobby livestock in city limits that I've had issues with or anything, but electric fencing is a great tool for deterring bears. Electric bear mats, so if there's bears on decks or near windows or porches, you can DIY and make your own electric mat, or they actually are marketing and selling a ton of good electric bear mats for folks to put out, and those are really good. On the cheaper side, nail boards are good as well, even securing them to the tops of dumpsters so they aren't getting in, are all good steps to mitigate, to keep bears out.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
And the nail board, I could see myself stepping on that.
Yeah.
In the wrong place in the dark.
Yep.
Yeah, those are great tips too. I appreciate you sharing all those. And, everyone should be bear aware and be careful with your homes and access.
Yeah, there was a guy who put a bear board underneath his window, and the bear stepped on the board and jumped through the window. So maybe that's not the best.
Is that at your house?
It was up the alley.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you,
Really
guys.
appreciate it.
Ryan, did you have anything else? or-
No, thank you.
Next up, we have item 6A, Whitewater Park update with Catherine, Matt Wagner, and Lisa McDonald.
Matt's not here today. He's
Matt's
homesick.
sick, and I really don't have a lot to say. This is this crew that will present to you. I think you all remember when Pickens County was before us a few weeks ago, and they've since, received some bids for their work on Two Rivers Road, so they'll make that presentation to you all tonight.
Why don't you guys all introduce yourselves real quick, just so everybody knows who's who.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am Lisa McDonald with the Healthy Rivers Program. I missed the
I'm going to give you an extra one.
your June meeting, so I'm happy to be here with you tonight to answer any questions you might have. I am joined by Lisa Tasker. She is also with our River Program. Chris Learman is with SGM. He's one of the engineers on the project. And is it Dave?
Yeah.
Dave with Frontier. He is our prospective winning bidder. We just went out to bid last Thursday. We had 2 bids, and we're working with our procurement department on contracting and everything with Dave right now. So I also included a little bit of history on the park project for you all. I think maybe Rick might know, James might know a little more of the history behind it from back, I think we started talking about this in 2006, the actual vision for the park and the water right. And so I wanted to include a little bit of that history for you all, so you had a little bit of background on the park. And just to let you all know that we've been collaborating and partnering with the town of Basalt since then. I think back in 2006. My boss, John Ely, who sadly passed away last in June, had this vision for the park and began working with the town of Basalt, and I think even Mayor Efting back in the day. So I just wanted to give you all a little bit of history on that, and I hope you had a chance to read it. And I think I will turn over the rest of the discussion to Chris and Dave. and hopefully answer any questions you might have on the project. So I'll let you guys go for it.
Well, thanks for having us back. We put the plans together after we met with you guys last time, took it out to bid, and we got two prospective bidders, Frontier Paving and Gould Construction. And Frontier gave us a schedule that starts with your approval next week. And so we got a project within budget with a schedule that works and a very accelerated timeline. The Gould bid was decent, but it was for a next year project. So our whole goal was to do this project this year so that we could do the Whitewater Park, the rest of it in the springtime. I have plans that we can look at. Nothing really changed. We value engineered two tiny little items out of it just to bring the cost down within our budget. But other than that, the plans are the same plans you guys looked at before. And so we can talk about that, or I can let Dave answer questions about traffic control schedule, anything else you might have about sequencing.
Okay. I think I read it. The memo was great, the history and everything. Thank you for that. It was good recap. I think in the memo it mentioned you might have some more artifacts for today. Is there anything else that you wanted to share as far as schedule? Like, I know we have the Gantt that's in there and the diagrams. Anything else, or is that the extent of it at this point?
No, I don't think so. We met on Thursday, like Chris said, and Matt Wagner with your Public Works Department was part of the process and was good with the, I think the schedule and was good with the schedule in working with Frontier. I think you all have worked with them before, I believe. So he was really familiar with them and was happy with the process.
Frontier does our street paving for the last, I don't know how many years, last probably 3 or 4 consistently.
Yeah, at least.
So
probably a dozen times over the last year.
Yeah.
We're actually paving out front too. You guys probably know that. Friday again. So, and we just finished up paving front of City Market and Bank of Colorado, that little section over there, traffic control, milling, kind of thing. This project, for me, is really easy. It's really a paving project. You're shoving the traffic over to one side, demoing that side, installing curb and gutter, a couple of pipes across the road, paving that half of it, a bottom mat, demoing the other half, grading, paving that, and then top mat. So it's about 3 days of paving, roughly, bottom mat on each side, and then a total top mat to keep it seamless. It's a real short duration project.
I know paving was one of the topics that came up a lot in the last meeting, as far as, when that all kind of shuts down for the year and everything. When your confidence level and being able to finish all of the paving this year, I mean, how confident are you in that? And can you commit to getting that done within the timeline that these guys have here in the Gantt chart?
Well, that's an easy schedule. We have one in Aspen. We're paving the Mill Street Bridge about the first week in November. So you'll be long before that finished. Yeah, we have our own plant, own mill machine, own traffic control. We control everything, really, our destiny, how it progresses.
You guys are pretty confident you'll be done by the end of?
Very confident.
Very confident.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
We don't want to have a dirt road in the winter there, or a portion of it, I mean. The other, you mentioned traffic control, making sure the lanes stay open. That's another sensitive topic because of, you have temporary stoplight flaggers, all that. It's, that's something that everyone's gotten used to. I don't know if they want to get used to a second place with that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're going to keep the lanes open over
Well,
this area?
I'm not sure if you've looked at the plans, but the plans show like traffic control devices that separate phase 1 and phase 2. So there'll always be 2 lanes. Simply, it's just moved over to the edge. Like the first phase will move the traffic over to the riverside edge.
Okay.
So you'll have 2 complete lanes there while we work and install the concrete and pave that half of it over there. There's 2 minor, probably small impacts if it's okay. We would run the pipe all the way across the river, all the way across to the river where the new house is going, the new,
Restroom.
yeah, restrooms in there.
Stuff that out there, basically.
Yeah, so there'll be some minor traffic control there, but it will not ever be closed. So it's completely open all the time. We'll have a full-time TCS that we have a full staff of flagging people, all the traffic control devices that anyone could ever use. So pretty confident the traffic control and the paving are not a problem, not an issue for us.
Has the traffic control taken under consideration the drop-off time for children at school in the morning?
I don't know about that.
Because that road is especially heavily traveled during drop-off to the elementary and middle school at that intersection. That looks like it's going to be pretty involved.
Oh, is it Elk?
Elk Road Drive.
Yeah, when we've done projects right here before during
School
school,
Street.
and we just have the contractor kind of chill out for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and that's really kind of the impact of it. And one thing I wanted to mention back to what Dave was saying about the utilities, where we have to go all the way across the road. That's actually the widest section of asphalt we have because of that parking area. So we have an ability to run the utilities across the road, divert traffic into that parking area, and then switch them back on the road and continue the utilities.
Okay, so you have more room to shift while you
Yeah,
work on
it's
other sections.
it's really wide right there because of the parking lot. So we can close that parking lot and divert traffic through it.
Okay.
So it's a 3-day paving project, but several more days to put the sewer tap in and
3 weeks, I think,
culvert,
is the
3
whole-
weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks
Okay,
roughly.
Just
Yeah.
to be clear, so it's not 3 days.
Right.
Back to the memo, there was a sentence in there that referenced the use of the park after all this is done. And it seemed like it was going to have more of a local amenity feel to it than maybe what was talked about initially was events and seating arrangements on the side of the slope and all those other things. I'm just curious to see if I'm recalling that correctly, or if it's changed since it was presented to as sort of an economic benefit to the town back in the day, and I'm not sure that that's proved out. I know it's a fun place to be during certain times of the season, but otherwise it's kind of tough. So is it?
It's shifted a little bit.
Has it?
And Sam is on, I think, with Blue Green. He's our landscape engineer on that, and he might be able to speak to that a little bit. Is he on?
Yeah, he's on it. Just a minute here, we can allow him to
If
talk.
that's okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's important to kind of, what's the bigger picture? What's going to happen there? Why is this shift and all that occurring, so people understand.
Right. It allows us more room to develop that bank, I think was the biggest goal of the shift.
It
And
helps.
move the fiber optic line.
We moved the fiber optic line, and that was right at the top of the toe of the slope. And by shifting this road over 3, 5, 8 feet, it allows a bigger seating area for viewing, but the biggest thing it does is it eliminates a lot of retaining walls. Our first version of this had retaining walls down the entire length of it. And by just that extra 3 to 5 feet, and that fiber optic line was like, it was what we had to design around. By that being gone, and then moving the road over a little bit, we can push the slope back. It allows wider areas, more open, and way less retaining walls.
I'm going to mention too, real quickly, that this is the old Highway 82, and I don't know if this is old Highway 82, so we have a lot more road width than you would typically have going through town. Maybe Chris can speak to this, but, so that's why we have these extra feet of road that we can take over and put into a park. That's the main reason why, is because it's old Highway 82, and it's much wider than it needs to be. So that was a huge benefit to us.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we acquired it. So it's 200 foot in there, I think, maybe at least. But anyway, back to the question of viewing areas and seating. Those are the things that I'm a little bit hesitant about. I think it's a great amenity, but I'm not sure how much we open it up to the world at this point.
Well, I think Sam has his hand up, so.
Okay.
Yeah, Sam, why don't you go ahead and address? You might be on some kind of mute.
Sam, you're unmuted, so you can speak now.
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, it is, you're correct. The intent is for this to be a multi-use space. It's scalable. It's for daily use, individuals, bird watchers, kayakers, school children events, all the way up to larger events that may or may not occur at the actual wave features. And as the team in the room was explaining, this road shift really justifies this park space. It makes it usable by the public. It allows for an intermediate trail. It allows for seating areas off of this, which allows for shade trees and structures. So it really activates the space. And I think particularly to Chris's point a minute ago, without the road shift, it's a very, very narrow, highly walled condition that is not conducive to any sort of gathering. So the road shift is really the linchpin in this. And we can certainly return to you, council and mayor, at a later date to go through some of the details that we have designed and then we are advancing for this park. We can talk about some of the seating area and the shade trees, etc.
That would be great. I know I did appreciate in the memo a couple of points back from the 2008 part. It's, I think it says a locally serving quality as opposed to a larger facility. The intent isn't to draw from a wide area. The intent is for this to be something that's very, local and not a kind of a regional draw or something like that. I mean, anybody could come, obviously, but you're designing it to be kind of smaller scale. But it would be great also to understand, what that's going to look like, just because it's going to be here in town.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to come back to the board.
Absolutely.
Chris and Sam are both working on on the new design now for the stream side and, part of it. And the biggest part is too for the water right. We have to have people in the water. We have to have people use the park in order to maintain that water right. So it needs to be used. So we want to have an enjoyable, spot down there. And I think I said in the memo, we are a sales tax funded program for the county. And so we can't just go out and do everything all at once. We have to, watch our budget a little bit. So this has definitely been phased, and then COVID hit, and, then we didn't have bids. So, I think you guys all know how that goes sometimes. But, yeah, so we definitely want to make it, we have the boardwalk in now, the improvements at Fish Park for the boat ramp, and I know I've heard people are, kind of doing the boat ramp, coming down, floating through the waves and getting out and, doing the loop and stuff. So, yeah, we want that use in order to maintain the water right.
And the water right there, because I know some people said, well, what about other places? And the hydrology there and the way the elevation changes there and the fact that the water right is needed there because of the ditch
Stream
upstream and
diversions.
then you have the pan below coming in. That's why that water right is so
There,
critical
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to call the water to an in-stream structure. Sorry,
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. Yeah, you have to be able to call the water to the in-stream structure. So there's the two wave structures are basically those structures that are where we're able to call for our water right under the Colorado water law issue. So, which is basically, there's about there's actually 5 different levels of CFS that are attributed to this whitewater park. And those water rights were made absolute in 2020 with a 2010 decreed date. So, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, it's a nice, elegant solution. Like, you get that done, and then you have some recreation, and you have water coming through there. So that's good. My only question is the 2 phases. Like, what does that constitute? Like, where the tasks and what's going to go into each phase, just so we all know.
Of the road shift project?
Yeah, like just this what you have there, that schedule at the 2 phases, I believe.
So phase 1 is we shift the road to the river. There's two 10-foot lanes. Other side of the road, reshape that, and then pave the whole thing. And the last, I guess, phase 3 would be striping the whole thing, but that's like a day.
Yeah.
What about the restoration of the old surface? Topsoil, seeded, irrigated?
You know, the second in the springtime, you're talking 4 or 5
I
months.
just didn't want people driving off into the mud and stuff, or
I hope they
shoulder it,
don't
or
be a brand new road to drive on.
maybe just a soft surface trail along that rail fence or something temporarily. I don't know, but it needs to be restored, and I don't know what the width of it is.
I mean, a soft surface trail is a really easy ask because there's all your road base there, so you
Right.
can just shape it and so the water sheds off and compact it.
Yeah.
That would be
That'd be easy.
Okay.
basically when you pull the asphalt off, it's already almost done.
Right.
So we
Just to defer people from parking there and things like that, because that's what'll happen.
So there is a slightly better answer than I'm telling you. One of the things we deleted from the project was putting a new fence up right now. It was like 15 grand, but you have to tear the fence out for phase 2. So there was going to be a fence 3 feet off the edge of asphalt. So the area you're talking about would have been behind the fence, an area that we're going to disrupt in the spring.
Right.
We took that out of the contract just to save a little bit of money because when we go to the next phase of the project, that's probably the first thing the contractor will tear out is our brand new fence. So it was going to be in no man's land protected by a fence. Now it's not. So we could easily peel the asphalt off and just keep the road base and have that as a trail. But you already have a 6-foot trail on the asphalt too. So we could do that.
I just make sure it's safe, like nobody, like if it rolls.
You'll still have the
off,
fence there. Everything that exists there today will still be there. It'll just be wider.
Yeah. Okay.
You can spend 15 grand on restoring that disturbed area until we get around to the next phase.
That's a good point.
Dave's laughing. Okay.
I'm good. I'm good with this. Thanks for coming back with all the additional info and everything. I know, you were pushing hard last time, but this sounds like a great project, and especially setting the stage for what you're going to do next year. We're looking forward to hearing that. So, thank you guys.
Thank you. And so with any luck, we'll see construction starting next week at some point.
Okay.
So it'll happen quickly.
Ryan, do you guys need anything else from us on this?
No, I think we have direction. So it's an administrative approval. James can, he's already done the administrative approval, but we wanted you all to come back to kind of give that blessing. And I think we have that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bears, the Whitewater Park to wildfire.
Yeah.
This will be a good one, too. Wildfire mitigation, Matthew Mastelier, Colorado State Forest Service, Ryan and Chris.
Yeah, and Chief Thompson is also joining us tonight as well. He'll speak a bit to some of the mitigation. And so I'll tee it up just briefly here. You might recall that we came to you all back in the April-May timeframe. I think the new council was seated, so it was probably in May. Presented a concept for some wildfire mitigation, mainly on the hill up above the downtown area, and focused on open space lands that the town owns. The Wilds HOA also owns land in that area that will be part of this project, and then CPW land. The idea is to do a meaningful mitigation that would really help to protect the town from wildfire in the future. I think it's important to mention that because we had a wildfire in 2018, yes, that took away some of the fuels that were up there, but we've also had growth since then. It doesn't make you immune in the future. So there really is a need after a mitigation like this to come back and maintain that mitigation. So The goal of today is for them to give you some more details. I think Chief Thompson can talk about the importance of mitigation and sort of what he sees up on that mountain. Before the fire ever happened, he would talk to me a bit about some of the worries he had about that catching fire up there. And so, I think this is a good step for us. The reason we're presenting it to you is on September 30th at 6 p.m. at the library. We're going to be having a public open house, if you will. We'll do a presentation to interested community members just to, present the idea and what we plan to do up there. And really, we hope to ultimately get some participation on the private side to do mitigation on their land. And this is sort of what kicked it off, and Chris had an experience last fall or maybe last summer that sort of spurred the idea, and then here we are today. So why don't we let them kick off with the project, and then we can have some Q&A with council about it. And ultimately, we kind of need your blessing as well to kind of go forth on this. So cool.
All right. Matthew's going to be doing the majority of the nuts and bolts of the project, and then I'm here to help with answer questions after that wraps up.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys already know these too, but I'm Matthew Massler. I'm with the Colorado State Forest Service. My office is out of Rifle. And so we serve as an agency that helps communities, help landowners with fire mitigation, forest health treatments, forest management, and just making sure that people can have someone educated to help inform their decision making on vegetation. So yeah, like Ryan had said, we're trying to do some fire mitigation work on this project area. So if we can look at how many people are involved in this project, it's not just the town, it's not just Wilds, there's Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, CPW is involved. We have a lot of partners involved who are all interested in making sure that this is a safe area and making sure that the community around is well protected. And if we can go to the next slide. This is a map of the project area. And so on here you can see some different colors. So that yellow color you see is what we have as our main prescription, which is a thinning. And I have some pictures coming up later in the presentation, but just wanted to reference to this map that we're going to be looking at quite a bit throughout the presentation. But you have that thinning is the major project, as well as doing some defensible space work. That purple color you see by Wilds HOA and up in units 5 and 6 on the northeast side. And as well as doing a demonstration unit that's going to be happening this fall. We're partnering with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers to do some work and show the community what it's going to look like before everything is all cut. Just trying to phase the approach a little bit so that people can see the progress that's being made and hopefully spur some action on the private side as well. It does total up to, it's just cut off at the top, but it's just over 47 acres total throughout the project. And the majority is on town land. CPW also has about 10 to 12 acres, and Wilds has, I believe it's about 6 acres. But yep, pretty much, yeah, that's the gist of it with the map there. But just kind of recognizing that shape, because we're going to be looking at that a little bit in these upcoming slides, just looking at the why we're doing this in this area. So I'll defer to Chief Thompson here on most of this here, but generally, we're looking at some of these areas, and you can see that blue polygon is the area that's being looked at. And these are all from our Colorado Forest Atlas, which looks at modeling to try and predict wildfire behavior.
So, in the top, you see 11 starts since 2000. Unfortunately, one of them had a huge impact on Basalt. And we all know that the Hill District, it's very vulnerable because of the fuels. So we're trying to lessen the fuels and get rid of our ladder fuels, and that's from the ground into the trees to keep it from being a canopy fire. If we can keep the fire on the ground, we have a great successful record, and we can actually put firefighters in. If it gets into the crown, we can't use firefighters. So we have to back away from a fire. So that makes the Hill District, the Wilds, all the way up Pinion Drive, all those things. The thing that I want to remind you of is we had the DC-10 and we took that away from another community because of our values at risk on the 4th of July in 2018. So the Eagle County assessor estimated what the Hill District was worth, and the DC-10 was diverted. One of my friends was working on that fire and called me on the phone, wanted to know what was going on, number one, because he's a firefighter in this valley, but he also didn't understand how we could get the DC-10 when he had a fire coming out of town in the San Luis Valley. So that really kind of strives the importance of this project and the values at risk. You know, we also have water that comes out of a, what am I trying to call it? So your main water is off of Luxinger Springs. So we're trying to protect that also. So in the end, what Matt's vision is to make it look like a park. Take some of those old pinyon and juniper trees out, lessen that load, and get rid of the ladder fuels, make it look more like a park. Kind of, I would say not return it to original, because if you look at some of the old historic pictures of Basalt, there's probably a quarter of the pinyon and juniper canopy back in the, probably right in 1900s. Just before the town was incorporated. So we've seen a lot of growth in the fuels. We're going to try to get that back to an area that we can manage fire-wise. Any questions for me?
Is that because of the suppression that's happened with fuels
We
that
did
the last 100 years?
We did too good of a job over 100 years.
Yeah.
You know, and the unfortunate part is we stopped the fire at the power line. Well, between the power line and all those buildings is probably the worst hazard. But, you know, that at the time in July in 2018, that was our only chance to stop the fire.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Who do you have in mind to do the work?
It'll get bid out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's several things. This is a cross boundary, and that's what a lot of grant funding is looking at, that we can cooperate. The other thing is this is one of the projects that the collaborative puts on.
Right.
And so that's actually helping too, to help us get that funding. So we are going to need some town funding, but I think with matches, some of the work that we can do on hand, some of Matt's work that he's already putting into it. Eagle County is helping partner with this. So I really think we can accomplish this. It's not going to be a cheap project. I'm not going to say that it is, but I think it's worthwhile. You know, the value's at risk. We lose one house, or we save one house. We just made the project worthwhile.
And just building on that as well, this is a map of the WUI risk, the wildland urban interface. So you can see the project area is located directly next to this giant red blob that is basalt. Just a giant area of wildland urban interface that's really high fire risk, where if it gets in to houses, then it could be spreading very quickly. And so trying to keep that from happening, keeping the wildfire outside of the town. And then one other main point that we've been looking at as well is helping with emergency evacuation and emergency ingress. So when people are there's a fire coming in, they have to be able to evacuate on these one-way in, one-way out roads. So like Promontory Lane, Ridge Road, and Pinion Drive are the three one-way in, one-way out roads in that area. And so just being able to look at those and feeling more confident in being able to bring emergency evac out and bring emergency responders in. And then I just kind of put together some general goals of what we're looking to see from this project. Generally, our three main goals are wildfire mitigation, forest health, and wildlife habitat improvement. So generally, like that fire mitigation side is looking at life and property, like reducing the risk to people around that area and reducing the risk of it getting into town. But then it's also looking at critical infrastructure like water tanks, utility lines, the hydroelectric plant up there. There's a lot of infrastructure in this area that definitely could utilize some protection. And then also, like I said, establishing those safer evac routes. And one thing that I want to note on insurance is, like, I know it's a constant question of homeowner insurance, but I can't guarantee this is going to help with insurance, but it's moving towards a state where you're able to be more confident that the insurance company is going to look at the whole community of Basalt and say, these guys are doing what they can to reduce wildfire risk, and it'll be more likely in the future. Like I said, it's not a guarantee of any insurance probability increases.
Do they look at all the heat maps and all that data that you have? Is that how they do their actuarials? And
I can't speak to their processes.
They use damage estimates per zip code right now is one of the bigger ones. And then they contact us, contact the fire department, and have us rate how close the fire station is, how many people are on duty. They're really getting into the nitty gritty. Hardening homes. That's, part of this is we're going to try to mitigate some of the forest and some of our wildfire risks, but people still need to harden their homes.
yeah.
So they go hand in hand. You have to do both to save your house.
So turn down the the color on the heat map on the main part of Basalt. That's with the hardening of the
Yeah,
homes.
that's the big part is instead of having it red in the fuels,
Yeah,
have it orange.
yeah.
This is really giving the ability of the firefighters to stop the fire from coming into the subdivisions.
Yeah. So insurance looks at damage and calls to you guys. So basically when something happens, so you prevent something from happening,
Right.
and you would think that that would help with insurance, which is what this.
They're looking at empirical data.
Yeah.
Well, then not just looking at wildfire mitigation, we also look at forest health. So one big thing that Chris has been looking at quite a bit is the pinyon ips beetle in here. And so if you guys have looked up in that area, you can see a lot of dead pinyon trees in there. And that's because there's this beetle that targets those pinyon trees. And once it starts building up a population, it's able to move on more quickly. And so what we're trying to do is this thinning that we're talking about, it actually helps a lot with that because the trees then have access to more nutrients, water, sunlight, and they're better able to withstand insects, drought, disease, and they're just more hardy against those type of things. So it builds a better, resilient forest. And it also helps reduce that competition for resources, because if you have all those trees in there, like I said, they're fighting for those water, sunlight, nutrients, and so they just have a harder time fighting off those insects. And then one of our prescriptions also looks at restoring wildlife habitat, because like Chief Thompson had said, 100 years ago it looked very different, and so we're trying to restore one of these areas to what it was before this pinyon juniper expansion, and it's going to be more of a sagebrush flat then, so it's a little bit better for like the greater sage grouse and just getting some different wildlife species back into the area, ideally.
Yeah, and real quick on the home hardening side, the Fire Adaptive Colorado program that's trying to grow its position here in the state is a good resource. The fire district up in Aspen has identified individual properties that are within those red zones that you're showing as 1 through 5 risk areas. It's kind of interesting to be able to look at your own house and understand what you need to do right around the perimeter of your home. And one of the things that was identified was the culture of trying to get people to remove their screening and their privacy from their neighbors was a big deal. So it's a hard sell. The other part of it is there is a permit process sometimes to go through, and Chris and I know about that, and James, and it can be, so if there's a way we can include the home hardening into a process where it's a little more adaptable to the homeowner, if it's an expense thing, can this grant funding that we're seeking help out someone that needs it to clean up their property? Other things are, we get into these environmentally sensitive areas around here, and that causes some other reviews to happen. And then just generally the cost of doing the work is, it depends. And then again, it's a phased approach, right? You got to do it every few years.
Right.
So maybe. from the town's point, no, go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm just really glad you brought that point up because we are actually approaching this kind of from two different angles. There is this larger kind of macro project looking at these wilds areas, places where we can work with CPW, with Colorado State Forestry, with some of the larger HOAs up there. But we are internally as well reviewing our tree removal permitting process and trying to come up with a better kind of sidetrack to be able to better address when people approach us for fire mitigation. It's still pretty early, I would say, in the planning stage and how that's gonna be fleshed out, but we're certainly looking at how we can better enable private owners to kind of address that on their own private property. And we'd like to try to have this project kind of work in tandem with that, where we kind of roll those new policies out at the same time. So I'm certain you'll see me in the coming year kind of coming to represent those new policies as we get them fleshed out.
And Rick, I love your idea. If somebody's going to harden their home, change their deck material, things like that, if we could, help them speed through the process of the building permit or give them a discounted building permit, whatever, let me know, because I would love to work on that. There's so many simple things that people can do on their houses. Screen vents. I helped a homeowner the other day, and he went to Lowe's, spent $26 on vents, and made a huge difference in his home. So, that wouldn't require a permit, but I'd love to work on that to help make that be a reality.
See at the collaborative meetings.
What kind of public outreach is there for, like, hey, you're red, let's be orange together? What kind of program is there that's broadly, like, you call CORE if you want an energy assessment, they come out and run through your house and be like, good, bad, do this, you're on and here's your roadmap, and then they leave.
So call your fire department. Mm-hmm. So all of the fire inspectors, I did it myself, hardening homes. We spent 2 days, and we're well-versed. Everybody from Glenwood Springs to Aspen Fire Departments all attended the same class. And it's all about what we're learning from fires and why houses are burning, and Dr. Jack Cohen, and going by what he's learned by burning houses. So, yeah, people should just call their fire department. We have an actual sheet that we've filled out. There's a couple of different ways to do this. We've done it electronically, and we've also done it in person on paper. And they've given that to the insurance companies, and we've saved some people from losing their insurance just with that form. So
I just wonder how many in the red would think that, or would know that, or it would be like Bear Aware is posted other places, and I wonder if we could do a better job as the town of just educating people, is like, this is available and it's important.
So I would speak to that, and I think, like any other program, it's challenging to get people's attention. We just post-fire in 2018, so it was top of mind for everybody. We created a program in reaction to that, literally went to people's homes, put door hangers on. We created a team that included the fire department, included Eagle County, offering for free inspections of your house. The town would take those, or free inspections to give recommendations on how to mitigate. The town would take that brush away for you, chip it. So, we set a very low bar for the property owner. And we had some people take advantage of that, but I'd say as a percentage, very low. So I think it gets back to a little bit this idea of screening. Whoever said that, maybe Rick said that, or people, they want to maintain their privacy to the point of potentially losing their home to wildfire. So it's, I think, I would say also, since the fire, Pitkin alerts, the Eagle alerts in the newspaper, on radio, it has gone out at significant amounts, and people are busy. They, think it's not going to happen to them. So I think, doing stuff like this, you're kind of putting it in people's front yards, so to speak, so they can see it and see that it's not clear cutting. You know, the first year of doing these cuts, it looks fairly stark, to be honest. 2 years down the road, you see grasses and flowers and, you know, things revegetating. It looks just healthy. So I think we're putting our best foot forward as far as that goes. The communication piece, that can always be, you know, just something we're going to have to keep doing that.
Right.
But this wildfire collaborative that I sit on the board, Chief Thompson's on the board, Rick, I think you're part of that through non-town related, but that organization is also doing a lot to get sort of that equity piece, getting into our Latino community to get the word out, because I think that was a missing link. And so I think there's a groundswell of things happening, and this project is a direct result of some of that. So I think there's reason to be optimistic, and we'll just have to keep beating the drum.
Cool.
And the other thing, after Lake Christine, the council agreed to some revisions in the building codes. So we did add a lot of hardening to those codes.
Yep.
So Snowmass Village and Town of Basalt both adopted new codes, which is a huge help, but it doesn't help the homes that are grandfathered, everything before then.
You mentioned too the WUI ordinances and things that the state has and that some counties have, but cities haven't adopted yet. And that makes it tough for individuals to be asked to comply with a regulatory, statute if it's not universal. And then, so that happens to us in the Upper Valley, was trying to convince homeowners, well, you don't have any way to enforce me to do this. Where you go outside in the county, and they may have steps they can take to do that. The other thing we did was curbside assessments up there, where we didn't do individual properties, but drove neighborhoods, and then identified properties in that neighborhood that needed attention, and then they were notified by the HOA, and then created some demonstration projects, stuff like that. And it kind of caught on after a while when people realized we weren't going to give everybody a severe haircut. And that might be something to look at on a global basis with Chris.
We're always available. We've done entire subdivisions. So, yeah, we can get involved. Even the more, unfortunately, this summer it seemed to, maybe it was because of the weather, but our assessment requests went way down. I think last year we did 30 or 40 during the summer. And the Eagle County's seeing the same thing. People are just, there's no smoke in the air, there's no danger, so people just don't think it's gonna happen to them.
Yeah, and what I've seen is the vegetation took off like it has never in the last few years. It blew up. So.
Yeah, and I do want to encourage those listening, we do have to somewhat thread a needle, so to speak, with a lot of private landowners, right? We can't just give them the free bill to go level their lots because we said it's fire friendly, right? We don't want any vegetation. So I always encourage residents that are interested in going down this route, the first step is to call the fire department, have them come out, do an assessment, because that gives it gives the private homeowner, it gives the fire department, it gets the town all kind of on the same page and looking at the same roadmap for an individual property. And then we can kind of have discussions from there about what's appropriate and do thoughtful removals, whereas that kind of limits then. I've run into many times in the couple of years I've been here that homeowners try to use being fire-wise friendly as a blank check to do whatever they want with their yard. And I discourage that, which is why I really like when people come to me first, that they've already been to the fire department, they've already gotten their assessment done, and then we can kind of sit down together and have that conversation about what's appropriate for removals and things like that. And it makes everybody kind of feel like they're all being heard, and it's all coming from this thoughtful process instead of just a willy-nilly, we took a chainsaw to the backyard.
Enhance my view.
Yes. Yeah. No vista pruning, please.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good call out, Chris, on the process. Like, what's the best way to tackle this if you want to go do it? And I think you got to keep beating the drum. It's just like radon and bears and whatever else. I mean, it's like you put banner. I mean, your uptake's going to vary, but you keep doing it because you're getting some people to pay attention, Chris, you're probably able to also like to help people understand like what makes sense in their yard
Yes.
from water and fire, right? So that at that point, you have that vantage point as well, in addition to maybe what to remove.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, this entire project kind of started to snowball from a homeowner that called on Ridge Road that wanted me to go take a look at their property. They had a crazy number of trees because for decades they had planted like they were an arboretum, right? Everybody loves trees. We're going to plant 10 of everything back here for, the perfect shade. The problem then being that that was left to go, that was left to grow out, that all those ladder fuels started collecting. There was never any brush clearing on the underside. These trees grow from being cute little 4-foot tall trees to being 50-foot tall trees running into each other, and you get this kind of continuous mat of vegetation. And then as we stood there, we looked into the open space behind their yard, which their lot actually sat exactly where CPW's land and Town of Basalt's open space butts up against each other. And I had a real head scratcher for a minute, being like, who the heck is responsible for this back here? I see at least 3 different property lines just standing in their backyard. And that's kind of where this whole cross collaboration really came into play, is that we needed to get all those players of those big macro areas at the table so we can kind of tackle it all at once so it has a more meaningful final result.
And like Chris was just saying, like you can see in these pictures, this is kind of like, this is right above Pinion Drive. It's all just really dense, continuous coverage. And then it's right up to Lake Christine Fire. Like you can see it on the right side of that left picture. It butts right up to that, the Lake Christine Fire butts right up to the project area. So we're looking to go right up to where that is, because Lake Christine Fire, they have all that grass coming up and it's much more likely to carry fire really easily. And so we want to be ready for that in case it's coming into town.
I know we had good discussion going on. Make sure we get through all of your content though,
Yep.
too. So.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it moving here. So this is what it would look like as an after picture. So this is like a 30-foot spacing, so a little bit bigger than what I was talking about. What we're looking at is 20 to 25-foot spacing, and that's to keep the fire on the ground, like Chief Thompson had said, and then retaining clumps of 2 to 5 trees, so it's not just the one tree space, not a checkerboard. It's an actual like park-looking area that we're looking for. And we're also trying to keep in sagebrush and keeping a varying size class diversity so that it's not all going to be hit by pinyon nips as soon as this is done.
I think another important thing that I think the slide has passed, but the different ages of trees that you'll try to.
That was a request when we started looking at this. When you look at typical prescription areas, they just indiscriminately kind of mosaic pattern their way through a space. And we had requested that we take a little bit more thoughtful consideration of the average age of tree being left behind. I did not want us to just run through here and leave, the biggest magnificent trees, but then they're all the same age, and we're looking at, trees do die eventually. We're looking at all these trees dying at the same time. So one of the things we'll be considering and be marking for is a range of tree ages. So we'll have things all the way down from sapling size all the way up to some of those magnificent, 50, 100-year-old trees left over.
What methods do you use to do the clearing, and then how often do you have to go back through, right?
So
5 years, 10 years, because it's not like you're going to rip everything out by the roots. That would be cost prohibitive. So you're cutting it down, and then it's going to regrow.
yeah, we'll go ahead one slide here. And so this is just, sorry, one more yet. One more. I think it's one more yet. We'll go back again, but the timeline here is what I was trying to pull towards. So what we're looking at is chainsaw work where people come in and they're able to come in and do, like I said, hand felling, and then they're going to pile all the stuff, and we're going to pile it for later burning. And the process is probably going to be about 2 years for implementation, and then the pile burning is going to happen the year after each cutting has been completed. So we're looking at probably 3 years out, and it all depends on when we get funding for grants, but that would be the general timeline for cutting. And then maintenance, things are going to grow back into those canopy gaps. So we have worked with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers to come back in and take a look at some of these maintenance areas and see how they can help out. So they'll be coming in and checking those canopy gaps and looking at things that have grown in, looking at any encroachment from like sagebrush growing into those gaps, and just trying to maintain that treatment that we put in place.
And I think it's important, just one more point. The reason the treatment was chosen is access by vehicle into these places is nearly impossible. So we really have limited options, I guess, available to us.
In theory, you do one, over the course of 3 years, one big cut, and then so long as you maintain that, you're fine.
Yep, that's right.
Correct. And this is also in an area where we do have active hiking trails. So we'll be maintaining those trails with this and actually doing a series of improvements on those trails, coupled with the wayfinding project that I'm sure you've all heard of. That'll come at a later date. That this will kind of open the space up. We'll be favoring leaving trees along those trails so that we can maintain that shade for people hiking, and then going back through with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers and other outside entities to kind of rebuild some of those trails as needed.
I'll just go back to the after picture again, this one right here. So this is up at CMC, so this is just showing that it doesn't look bad forever. Like, you're starting to get grass coming back already. And like I said, this is not quite, it's not gonna look the same. This is a bigger spacing than what we're looking at. But you can see that it doesn't look bad forever. Like, it's gonna look bad the first year, and then after that, it's gonna start looking better and better because you're gonna have grasses and native shrubs coming back into place.
Are you doing anything to kind of keep the invasive weeds and, things like that out of the space that's made?
Yeah, we're looking at erosion mitigation and trying to mitigate against invasives as well by doing some seeding in there.
Okay.
And so that's especially important on those steep slopes. Cool. But just generally walking through the prescriptions, we don't have to take too much time with this, but it's, like I said, 20 to 25 foot spacing, leaving those clumps, leaving the age class diversity so that we're able to have better resilience against insects and disease. We're doing that restoration of sagebrush like I had talked about, where we'll be doing removal and doing feathering of the edges so it's not a hard line where you have just a really stark image on the landscape. And then the defensible space work, we're doing it according to State Forest Service Home Condition Zone guidelines. So we're extending out beyond the, like, zone 2 and out, if you're familiar, it's like 30 feet beyond the home and outwards, just so that we're able to do some thinning in those areas and reduce the canopy continuity. And also doing some ladder fuel removal in those areas. And as far as slash treatment, like I had said, there's either pile and burn, or there's the option of mastication, depending on what cost estimates come in at. I don't think there's gonna be much for the mastication, but we're just trying to leave it open-ended in case it comes in at a much lower bid, and we'll be able to get more work done with that funding.
And just to clarify, the burns would happen during the winter. We just go up there on a cloudy, snowy day and snow on the ground, so there's no threat. And we'd work with the state and Eagle County on smoke dispersion.
And just to be clear too, all the cutting would happen during the winter as well, because the pinyon ips beetle is really active from the months of like April through October. It's when the daytime temperatures are warmer. And so just trying to plan the treatments around live tree cutting when we're not going to attract a bunch of beetles into the area and cause a big issue with the remaining trees left behind. And then this is just the map again to show, like, these are the treatment areas once again. Like, you can see the prescriptions. That yellow again is the thinning. That green unit 3 is that ecological restoration for wildlife habitat. And the D-space treatments around units 5, 6, 7, and 11. And then that demonstration area of the thinning is up along Pinion Drive. And a quick walkthrough of the budget, just general costs. This is pretty much lined out to where it's going to be. I tried to overestimate a little bit for grant purposes, but this is about what I expect it to be, is around $177,000 total. And that's including contractual costs, like my time in setting up the project and helping develop things, and then as well as paying the contractor to actually do the work and go and implement the project. And then also Eagle County's helping to contribute funding, and we've talked about doing some in-kind work with the fire department. We're still figuring out the ins and outs of that, but looking at trying to reduce costs by helping out with in-kind match. And supplies like the seeding, straw wattles, and wooden stakes to help with erosion mitigation. That comes out to about $16,000. And then after the grant reimbursements, it's about 50%. That's usually the cost share that everybody wants for these grants. And so it'd be about $88,000. And then I have a table below lining out all the different landowners and what their costs are.
Yeah, and to be clear, the Wilds HOA and CPW are also contributing funds. This is not the town just paying for the private HOA land.
And we already went through timeline. I think.
Yeah, the important thing to note is that November 2024 will be the first demonstration plot. We've got Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers signed up to come out here for about 2 or 3 days to do a small demonstration area up by where the water treatment plant is. If you've walked that recently, you've probably noticed the lovely, colorful ribbons everywhere. The colors are somewhat arbitrary, but those are marking things to remove versus keep versus limb up to remove that ladder fuel potential.
All of the defensible base units have retention trees marked. So those ones will have trees pruned up. And then that Unit 0 that I had talked about that Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers is helping with is up along Pinion Drive. And that's the one that I believe it's all pink flagging. And if you walk in there, you can see the retention trees as well. So just being able to visualize a little bit before it happens. Otherwise, that is everything I had for you guys. Are there any questions related to the project?
We've been using a new piece of equipment called a tree climber, and it's pretty interesting. It goes up a 30% slope. It's on tracks. It's got the ability to chip in place.
You should send me the link to that. I always like new equipment.
It's like watching a
Flower, it's very precise as well. So.
Is that what it is? It is a chipper? Or does it cut the tree too?
Tracks, it can do both.
Huh?
Yeah.
Drop them and chip them up
And
different sizes.
And typically, when this contract goes out, the type of companies that will end up doing this work are very forestry oriented. They have that type of equipment along with everything under the sun you could imagine. I mean, they'll be probably coming from places like Washington, California, that they do this pretty regularly. So this will be a pretty skilled and pretty fast, move through the area sort of contractor. And then we'll be obviously on site to help kind of direct what exactly they're leaving behind.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys think of any other questions, my phone number and email are on there, so you can reach out, or if you want to contact the fire department about home site assessments. Always a great move too.
I just have one quick question
go for it.
Chief Thompson. It's out of this, but inside the fire escape. I was working with a general contractor this week, and he was telling me that in net zero homes, you guys are having issues fighting fires because the air is so tight in the home, and then the batteries and solar. There's this whole and I was just wondering if that was true because it seemed somewhat like an anecdote, but then we were talking about all this stuff we're doing for fires, and then we all are also passing these energy codes to make our houses more efficient. And so I was just wondering if you just could do just a quick take on it. I can call you later.
Can I say yes and yes? Solar on the roof during the day, there's a disconnect on the side of the building, but for the firefighters on the roof, they're still hot and energized and no way to shut them off. So one of the ways to ventilate so we can go into a structure to fight the fire and put the fire out, even a room and contents, we have to poke a hole in the roof.
Yeah.
So that eliminates that possibility. So we're having to do side ventilation, windows, not even cutting open the sides of homes to ventilate. We just recently had a fire in a straw bale house. It was impossible. 26-inch ceilings stuffed with straw. We fought that fire for 4 days. We finally had to get a trackhoe and take it apart. And it was post and beam with straw. So yeah, there's a lot of things. The Tesla walls are terrifying when they self-destruct. When their cells start burning, it's nearly impossible to put it out. So we're going to be protecting the structures on both sides of it. So there's all kinds of war stories. I don't think we've seen it all yet. I'm terrified right now. In Snowmass Village, they're putting electric charging stations in all the underground parking structures. So how do you put a firefighter down there when a electric car is, and the sprinkler systems are going down on a metal roof of a car and just shedding it off, so it's not putting them out. So we've invested in some blankets that we can throw over a battery or a car and drag it out of the structure. And then also a under-car nozzle that we built ourselves in our maintenance shop, in our vehicle maintenance shop, to be able to go under the cars. So yeah, we're learning as we go, but some of the situations we're just going to stand back and let it burn, unfortunately.
That's what he said. That's what I was wondering. So I wanted to just get it from the source to make sure
Yeah,
I wasn't
they're
spreading these.
Yeah, some of the stuff that I'm seeing, coming mostly out of New York City, and it's, batteries that started on fire because people are using not the charger that came with the unit, not the charger that's designed by the manufacturer. They're buying off brands.
Easy bikes or
Yeah, and it's overcharging, and once that cell in that battery starts on fire, it just spreads.
Well, it might be something else to work with SunSense. And I mean, I know I have battery packs in my house. When I heard that, I was like, oh geez, like what, so what are the precautions as a homeowner with that stuff we should be taking, not only with.
Well, the one thing that, this is important for everyone to know that, number one, use the charger that's designed. Don't get your batteries wet, especially in salt water. That's why you see a lot of electric vehicles catch on fire when the hurricanes and storms come, is water with salt conducts electricity, which causes the batteries to burn. Well, we've already had a battery that was left outside under the stairs that got wet, and it started on fire because the moisture pulled the cells apart, the insulation between the batteries, and started the house on fire. So the other thing that I tell people is if they're scared of their batteries, I'm carrying a lithium-ion battery on my pack set on my radio. So there's a lot of these batteries, and people ask, well, where can I store them when I'm not using them? Military cans, the metal cans with the snap lids, is a great tool. We use those after fires to collect the batteries. The last house that we had, that's where the battery is still in a metal can like that. So, did that help?
Yeah, no, you just confirmed everything I talked to him about, so I was just making sure that I didn't hear something and tell other people that.
It's going to be very interesting as how it comes, what happens in the future and what we can do on building codes. UL and NFPA has some guidance, and we're going with that guidance, but the building codes haven't caught up yet.
Sounds like another work session topic we should do sometime as far as like the home and the yard and all that. So
every other year, they do a new building code with the International Code family, and Town of Basalt, Sonoma, Mass, City of Aspen have been really good about, adopting those changes. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about time now for the Town of Basalt. The unfortunate thing for the fire district is then we end up with like 4 or 5 different codes when we're building around the different parts of the valley. So there's no true easy way to just pick a code. And sometimes we want to wait for the knowledge and the data and what we've learned from fires to catch up, to make a big difference with the code.
Make a quick comment on the code and the coordinations. I know that's on top of your brain always.
Yeah, we're working with the fire department all the time on development and review applications and whether EV charging stations should be inside, outside, other locations, and just batteries for PV stations where they should be located on the building. So we're aware, working through the things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Great information. Looking forward to the session at the library.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be thrilling.
No, I just
I
appreciate everybody being so positive for this.
Yeah,
it's much needed.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Matthew. Thank you, Chief.
All right, moving right along into council actions, item 7A, resolution number 36, series of 2024, a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving installation of a 1-inch water service line at 102 West Cypress Drive, Basalt, Colorado. And James, I think you are up.
Yeah, thank you. This item is consideration of a resolution that you have in your packet that would permit the installation of a 1-inch water service line at 102 West Cypress Drive. As background, the applicant and homeowner at 102 West Cypress Drive, who we have here this evening, is Alex Klum. He is requesting a water service line that goes beyond the 3/4 inch line size that is required by the code to go to the council to get approval if you go above 3/4 inches. And the applicant is requesting this increase in conjunction with considering doing an addition to his house. And he has a report from an engineer that identifies that a 1-inch line would be needed to avoid turbulence in the line and premature failure of pipes and fixtures. The Public Works Department has reviewed the request and they are accepting of the proposal to go beyond the 3/4 inch line that's allowed at a staff level. It is noted by staff that this doesn't mean that there'll be an increase in the water usage or impact in the water usage. Water usage is dictated by the type of fixtures and the amount of fixtures in a house, and not necessarily the size of the water service line. So staff thought that was important. So this evening, staff would suggest hearing any comments that Alex has, and then providing council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the resolution as drafted. Alex, do you have any comments for the council?
I just wanted to thank everyone for their time, for considering this. I think largely it's based on the information I'm getting from our engineers. And it seems like a fairly modest request, but happy to answer any questions.
Oh, a lot of questions here.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 36, series of 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Hey, don't use all that water, okay? I'm coming to your house to shower. We won't be putting the fires out.
Right. Next up, we have a public hearing and second reading ordinance number 13, series of 2024. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting an extension of vested rights for the site plan approval, Southside Floodplain Reach 2 ESA review approval, community housing review approval, and a license agreement for an automated car wash located at 115 Southside Drive, Lot 1 of the Basalt Business Center West Subdivision, Basalt, Colorado.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of a 1-year extension on the automated car wash approval at 115 Southside Drive. As was discussed at first reading, the car wash was approved in 2020. And in association with that, the town would have received property from the applicant adjacent to Southside Drive for the construction of a series of parking spaces to better organize the parking in the area, which has been an issue over time. Additionally, the town would receive right-of-way area to allow for the potential construction in the future of an underpass, vehicular underpass under Highway 82 from Midland Avenue to Southside Drive. So staff saw these as the benefits from the project. In 2023, the applicant was granted a 1-year extension and have requested a new 1-year extension. And as was discussed at the last meeting, it was due to issues with inflation and interest rates and just challenges that they had in getting the car wash equipment. At the last meeting, the council approved the ordinance on first reading, and there haven't been any changes to that ordinance since first reading. So staff would recommend this evening hearing from the applicant, taking public comments because it is a public hearing, and providing council discussion. If you're comfortable with the ordinance, you could approve it on second reading. We have Mitch Haas here this evening, representing the applicant group. Mitch, you have any additional comments?
Thanks, James. Yeah, I'll be just brief. John Belkin, who's my client on this, would like to have been here tonight, but he's sick and didn't want to come and make anybody else sick. So he's staying home and watching. But no, nothing new since we were here, 2 weeks ago or so. I guess what I would ask is, we're happy with a year. If you're willing to consider anything longer, that would be great, since it felt like we turned around and we were back here again this year from last year. And just generally speaking, even if John decides to, everything lines up and the rates get better and he decides to move forward, usually takes about 6 months to prepare a building permit application anyway. So a 1-year extension is really like 6 months. Practically speaking. So to the extent you're willing to consider a 1.5 or 2 years, that would be wonderful. And I feel like the way the decision's written by James, the things a council is typically concerned about maybe being at risk if the vested rights extend are not at risk here, because we're not vested against changes to energy codes, employee housing, and a whole host of other things. So if those rules change, they change for this project anyway. So if you would be willing to go longer and save us from having to be back so quickly, hopefully not at all, but then we'd like to ask that you consider that.
Thanks for that. Any questions or comments?
If 2 years works, it works, I guess. I don't have a problem with it. A year does seem like an awfully short time frame anymore.
Yeah, I agree, for the reasons that Mitch listed. I mean, in the interest of all of our time, a year is just so short. And so for the markets to change and then them to get their building permit application together and everything, I feel like we're just going to be back here in a year. So I would be in favor of whether it's 18 months or 2 years, amenable to that.
I know typically, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, typically it's a 3-year vesting unless something else is negotiated at the beginning. And then after that, at least in the councils I've been on, we've been doing 1-year increments after that. Like, it's not so much that I, say, 2 years is too long or 1 year is too short, but like for the sake of consistency is my only concern, like just so we're not like, well, let's give this applicant 1 more year, or let's give this applicant 18 months. I'd rather do with whatever we, do in the initial application and then 1-year increments thereafter. I know it's just for the sake of consistency.
I'm fine with that. A year, it's fine.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, and so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing to the room here, which I don't think we have anyone, but if do online.
It doesn't look like we have anybody online either.
So seeing no one wanting to make public comments, I will close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 13, series of 2024 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks. Hopefully,
Fair enough.
it all
Yeah, hopefully
comes
we won't
together.
come back at all. I think you gotta ask, right?
Maybe we want to see you again.
Still happy with the 1 year. Yes. All right, well, thank you very much.
All right,
Mitch.
have a good one.
Good to see you.
All right, we are just almost back on schedule. Item 7C, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 14, series of 2024, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting amendments to the Declaration of Covenants related to the category affordable housing units and real estate transfer assessment for the multifamily portion of the Stottsville development. Parcel C in Lot 37, Block 4, Stottsville Subdivision, PUD, Basalt, Colorado, and this is James and Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of amendments to the Stottsville covenants on the affordable housing units that are in the multifamily portion of Stotts Mill, and you see it identified here in yellow on your screen. These changes to the covenants, once again, are being requested by the developer in order to get a HUD loan on the property. And as we explained, in 2017, there were 19 deed-restricted units that were approved in the multifamily area, and they're still all owned by the developer. As part of the HUD loan process, HUD has requested several changes to the covenants while there is a HUD loan on the property. Specifically, they requested that the Special Housing Evaluation Committee, which is made up of town staff, allow for vacant category units in which we can't find a tenant within 30 days to be able to permit a tenant of a higher category level to rent the unit. And the intent of this by HUD is so that the units stay rented and not vacant. Staff does not believe that this is a problem. We haven't had any difficulties finding tenants for the units, and they have not been sitting empty. Also, the other request relates to the RETA covenants, as we discussed at first reading, and it's a request by HUD that in a foreclosure situation, the RETA would not be applied to HUD, and a lien would be a subordinate to HUD's loan. As we discussed at first reading, town attorney and town planning staff have reviewed the changes to ensure that the amendments are only in place during the time of the HUD loan. And Jeff provided some comments at the last meeting. Do you have anything else to add?
No, you covered it.
So staff would suggest this evening that council, we don't have any applicants with us this evening, but you take public comments because it's a public hearing, and then provide council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on second reading.
Thanks. Let's go ahead and do the public hearing. Again, I don't see anybody coming up. I've opened the public hearing if anybody wants to speak. I don't think there's anyone online, but Pam, do you see anybody? All right, I will close the public hearing. I don't have any additional questions or comments on this, but if anybody else does, go ahead and speak up. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion here.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 14, series of 2024 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Thanks, James. Next up, item 7D, public hearing and second reading, ordinance number 15, series of 2024, ordinance of the town council of the town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the 2024 budget and providing for a supplemental appropriation related to various revenues and expenditures. Doug.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be brief. We reviewed this last council meeting where we're amending the budget, both in the restricted funds and the general fund. The net effect is really giving, taking a positive to the bottom line of $13,000. The main reason for the amendment, there's a lot of smaller items, but the bigger item was the construction of the Stotts Mill daycare. And we had not had fully developed those numbers at the time of the budget, therefore this basis for the amendment. Back on Exhibit A, page 2 of 2, just as a refresher, is a little snapshot P&L of the project. We were able to secure grants from the employer-based child care of $800,000. Michelle, under her direction and efforts, were able to, her team, were able to secure from Pitkin County $451,000 as IGA money. And with that, the town contributed $50,000 that it was part of the matching of the project, and we redirected some restricted funds from daycare, which were impact funds that we directed funding. So net was what we were pulling in $1,461,000 of revenue. Project cost $1,447,000. Occupancy permit was issued. They're up and running. We'll be talking about the lease here in a minute. But right now the project is basically complete. And just right now, it's just wrapping up the formality of the incorporating all of these into the amended budget. And then there were some other things in the amendment itself. Nothing remarkable, my view.
Sounds good. I'll open the public hearing. If anybody wants to make comments from the public, in the room, online, same cast of characters in both. I will close the public hearing and see if anybody has additional questions or comments since last week, or last meeting.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 15, series of 2024 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Let us begin with Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Angel Dupree-Bouchard.
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
You hear your name and you want to say yes.
You say yes.
All right, moving right along to item 70, first reading ordinance number 16, series of 2024. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving a purchase and sale agreement for Midland Residences condominiums and authorizing the purchase of 6 deed-restricted units. This is Ryan and Jeff.
Sure, yeah. Council, as you know, through the recent approval of an ordinance to condominiumize the Basalt Center project, within that approval ordinance, there was a condition that the developer offer a right of first purchase for the category restricted units to the town prior to offering those units to other potential buyers on a waterfall chart. Based on that review and that offer, we've received some direction to council to pursue purchasing 6 of those units. They are mostly Category 1 units. There'd be 2 studio Category 1 units, 2 one-bedroom Category 1 units, and 1 two-bedroom Category 1 units. And in addition, there's a 1-bedroom Category 3 unit. The total purchase price for all of those units is, I lost it, 2.3.
2337, I think.
$2,337,000. To move forward with that purchase, the charter requires that town council approve purchases of real property by ordinance. So what this ordinance would do was authorize the purchase of those units by approving a purchase and sale agreement. At the time we posted the notice and agenda for the meeting, that agreement was not yet available, but we've since have that, and that's available for council and also available here in the meeting room for the public to inspect, and will be in the packet for second reading. Staff has reviewed that agreement. We worked through a couple changes with the developer seller. There's a couple of other questions that we're still working through. The ordinance would authorize me to make some changes to this agreement if in the best interest of the town. And again, there's just a couple things that we're trying to get some final answers on, but otherwise feel pretty comfortable with the form of the agreement. And
there may be some minor changes to this,
maybe
for second reading, but
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
And I believe that about covers it. This ordinance is first reading, would authorize approving the agreement. I guess I should add that in approving this agreement, the actual closing on these units, of course, wouldn't occur until the project is built and there's a temporary CO for the units. And so that is going to be some time from now, but likely developer projects end of 2025, early 2026. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So that was my question was, is there a sunset on this thing if nothing happens in the next 18 months? Or are we still engaged with them, or how does that all?
There's a provision in there that requires them to substantially complete the project
I don't have my copy of this.
Substantially start the
We'll
project.
substantially complete the project within a certain period of time of pulling permit. So let me find that. It's within 30 months after the effective date, subject to a force majeure provision.
Is the,
And, I mean, once they start, they've, there's their interest and everyone's interest to
yeah,
complete it this time as quickly as possible.
just looking for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and so in the event they fail to, there's the ability to terminate and get earnest money returned. And it's also subject to future appropriation by council for the money to actually purchase the units, because the closing again wouldn't occur during this fiscal year. But if after you've had an opportunity to review the agreement between now and second reading, if there's other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Maybe one more for Doug. Does that money that's not part of the earnest money go into a restricted account or a fund or some interest bearing? Are we reserving that?
It's going to the title company.
Well,
The
initial earnest money goes to the title company. What about the rest of the obligation? Is that secured somehow? The 2 point,
The funding is 2,380,000.
right, and we're putting down 25%?
15%.
Well, it's 15 initially and then additional 10.
Yeah, so total
So we have
25.
25%
Yeah.
down.
And then what we would bring back to you all is sort of the financing strategy. So I mentioned a little earlier, but the town has a few real estate transfer assessments, and those have been collecting money that were specifically earmarked for affordable housing. So we're going to be able to get pretty far down the road, and the remainder of any money not covered by those, we would look at a few different options, kind of backstopping it potentially with our affordable housing money from the bond, but looking primarily at financing them through certificates of participation, which, we could run out for a 20-year term and have a pretty low annual payback for it. So we've got that strategy, and obviously need to bring that back to you, but we feel confident that the money's there and we can pull this off and add to, some much-needed community housing. So.
For the next second reading, can we get an overview
Sure.
of the that, just as
We
I
have like,
don't want to see that.
this ballpark, we had $1 million of just dry powder ready to go.
Yeah.
And I know the number kept changing because we wasn't exactly sure where the ball landed until, anyway. But yes, you can certainly have it.
Good. Get a chance to read this, but I think, stepping back, this is a great thing you guys are figuring out and a great opportunity. I know, there's been concern about, rentals versus ownership, and I think what we're doing here is increasing the rental stock, what it would have been otherwise, in a way. So this is good.
We have obviously inspection period after it's done before we do we do like our own inspection on our units? With the-
Yep, and there's a warranty period for a year on the units. For the public's benefit, maybe just explain kind of how the process works for town employees versus the other
Sure.
essential workers and organizations that would have take advantage of.
Will you do it so that we get it right? I'll mess it up.
So, our policy is that town-owned employees have a first crack at the units that the town owns. And then they waterfall down. If we don't have a town employee that's interested, then it's nonprofit entities, including the school district, as a second priority. And then it waterfalls down further to regular employees in Basalt. And then if there's nobody in those initial groups, then it widens out to people that work between Aspen and Glenwood.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So that's great. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. I ran across the letter from the library today while I was going through my pile of stuff. where Amy suggested that we would try to keep these units in the rental pool. And I think that this accomplishes it pretty significantly.
That's right.
So, thanks, Amy, for the feedback, and I think we've met our outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call.
Nice work.
Mhm.
This is not a public hearing this week, so if there's no more questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 16, series of 2024, and on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for September 24th, 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Angèle Dupré-Bouchard,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Peter Schindler,
Yes.
Angela Anderson, Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right. Next up is item 7F, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a second extension of the lease agreement with Loose Cannon LLC. Ryan, you got this one.
Yeah, so as you know, we purchased the Umbrella Roofing property, and the tenant had leased that property back. There was no charge for that lease for a period of time. Basically, they are building, or were building, a new home base down valley for themselves. And the idea was we'd allow them to stay there free of charge until that finished, because it was just a few months, and we didn't need the property at the time. They have since moved out, but they have two structures left on the property that, as part of the purchase agreement, were to be taken out of the property when we closed. Those are still there. I've been in contact throughout the summer with the owner, and he is working to get those removed. He did attempt to have an auction to get them out of there, which did not work. And so now he's engaging with some folks that come and they pull the trailers out of there, and we'll haul them off and reuse them. But for us, we're just getting to a point that we want to use that property, particularly this winter, for storage. Trevor, I did speak with him a few weeks ago, and just said, I think we're going to need to bring this back and charge you rent. So we had contemplated the $5,000 a month for that. And so that would be for this month. I think that gives time for this trailer hauler to get to the property. Into next month, the purchase contract contemplates that if it is not clear and ready for occupancy by us, that it would be $500 a day. So that ramps it up and just kind of puts the pressure on to deal with this. The two structures that are on there are mobile trailers that they had used for offices. I do not want to get stuck with dealing with demoing those and getting them off. We've had to do that in the past, and it is very time consuming. So this was the deal that we made, and I did reach out to Trevor just to let him kind of know what we were doing here. I have not heard back from him yet, but I think this is an appropriate step, and there's been ample time that we have given as a town to get this free and clear so we can take occupancy.
Does that existing tent have any value for storage for us?
The Quonset hut?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll use that this winter. Yeah. So that stays, as well as one shed on the property. And then the two mobile trailers need to go.
And we can't use those for any of our stuff?
No. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Paint the Quonset hut in our branding. We have our logo branding, or are you just going to leave it?
Good idea.
It'll probably stay. Eventually that Quonset hut will go away once we develop the property. But for the time being, it's a useful storage place for us. So, yeah. And really, because there was this purchase agreement and there was a condition that all of the structures be removed, I have not permitted our town staff to occupy it, and just, it gets messy, potentially. So I just want it to be how we had contemplated in the purchase agreement. And, I do believe, like I said, Trevor is working in good faith to try to get them, but I think maybe this puts a little more emphasis on our position.
Remind me, how long has he been utilizing the space free of charge?
Since end of March, so
Okay.
April. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he did clear out by June timeframe, but as far as his operation, just has these remaining structures.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 37, series of 2024.
That was his best one.
It's been
That was his best
moved and
one.
seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. And that brings us to our last agenda item, which is an executive session, so I'll entertain a motion for that.
Mayor, I move the town council enter executive session for a conference with our attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions in accordance with CRS 24-6-4024B. More specifically, to discuss pending litigation related to GBM LLC versus Town of Basalt.
Mayor, just one quick comment. I forgot to mention Mary and Matt over at the pool in last weekend's dog event. I just want to get on the record and say that was awesome.
Oh, good.
And then the playground, if you haven't gone by there, that fish is a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, so it's cool. Anyway, I forgot to mention that.
No, good comments. Thank you
Thanks.
for that. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
So
Doug.
we are going to enter executive session, but we have to take a few minutes to shut everything down and get ready. And we will adjourn after that. So thanks for those who are watching.
Is this